This could very well go down as one of the most obvious and yet most beloved scheduled ban and restricted announcements that we've had in the game of Flesh and Blood. Let's talk about it. This was posted today. I am not going to beat around the bush. In the classic constructed format, High Octane was banned. Everyone expected that. It was literally said by Brian Gottlieb on the World's stream, but Count Your Blessings Blue is banned, and that one's the really interesting one. So let's talk about both of them. First things first, I can very much say I appreciate the way that James White broke this down. He talked a lot about the why behind the High Octane banning, tied it back into the design and development principles that they touched on in the previous ban and restricted announcement, and basically just discussed how High Octane enables essentially just like not infinite value, but far more value out of your weapon than you could get out of any conceivable combination of cards, and I would agree with that. Now, here's the thing. I'm fairly ambivalent on High Octane in general. I don't think it is as powerful as anything Zen was doing, and I think that's an important delineation to make. I think it's a step down in power level overall, but it is a card that allows players to just say, oops, I win the game if you just draw into it, plus a combination of cards. And I think it's important to understand in a game that is all about the push and the pull, the back and the forth, and the decision making that matters, having a card that says, oops, I win the game is kind of a bad thing. It takes away from the overall experience, and Sam Sutherland put on a clinic on how this card can be used and can be very good in the overall Worlds stream, but also in the top 8 as well. So this, I think, is a positive change and one that everyone expected. Now, the one that a lot of people were hoping for, and the one that I think is the most nuanced of all the changes, is really interesting. Count Your Blessings got a nerf to just being the reds and the yellows. You can no longer play the blues. Now, it's interesting because James White dove into the idea of what a control deck should look like, or what he hopes a control deck would look like in Flesh and Blood. And he says, from a design point of view, Count Your Blessings is an excellent example of what a control deck should look like in Flesh and Blood. It seeks to neutralize the opponent's threats and reward achieving a long game by how it scales over time. Now, it's interesting because you compare this to something like Oldhim, which was a hero that by and large played a fatigue style game, a very defensive, blocky style game. And that was in essence a control deck. I mean, you look at other heroes like Icelander, which you could very much argue was a control deck in some way, shape, or form, and you look at some assassins, which you could argue are disruptive control decks. But then you go to, Oldhim, or in this case Enigma with Count Your Blessings. Count Your Blessings conceptually is attempting to pull and extract value and neutralize threats by just outgaining them. And I understand where he's coming from in this perspective. Do I agree that this is what a control deck should look like? I don't know. That's a good question, because in a way I would say that Count Your Blessings is a net positive and a net better attempt at control versus Oldhim. But by how much is the question. I think for me, I was okay with Count Your Blessings beforehand because I understood that there's a lot of nuance that goes into actually playing out and enacting the game plan. And if you watch the World's finals and top 8 and top 4, those games are incredibly long, and for some they're incredibly arduous to get through and to watch through. But if you're really digging deep into the play lines that both players could take, it is pretty interesting to watch players decide whether or not now is the time to play Count Your Blessings, or it's time to pitch it, or if the opposing player should try and put counter pressure on, or if they should try to pitch stack to something really, really big. That's the really interesting back and forth of Count Your Blessings that I think is better than just Block Simulator in Oldhim, which was what we had previously. So I get where he's coming from in that, though I would wonder what other ways can we interpret control that isn't just disruption, because disruption is one thing, control perhaps is another, and I don't know. I'd be interesting to see what design points of view perhaps, or what design spaces they stretch control out to in the future. But nevertheless, what they've done is they've taken the blues, which is the most advantageous of the 3 colors, out because it was clearly able to pitch. It gained you the least amount of life, but it was one of those cards that you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to either start my Count Your Blessings chain off by resolving it first, or I'm going to pitch it to the late game, and then when it would have gained me like 1, 2, whatever, like minimal amount of life, all of a sudden it's gaining me massive amounts of life because I've used the other ones. So it gained and scaled over time. Now you take that away. Now you can only run 3 reds and 3 yellows, and everything gets a little bit harder to do with Count Your Blessings. And so it has certainly curbed it. This might just straight up kill the archetype of Count Your Blessings. We'll see, because less Count Your Blessings plus them being harder to manipulate and keep for later because they're reds or they're yellows might mean that it's just not approachable anymore. Nevertheless, they also said that part of the reason that Count Your Blessings was trouble was because that you basically couldn't interact with it. You couldn't play into it as easily. The silver bullet cards weren't very achievable or very usable, and so overall their game plan in the future is to print cards like this, cards like Jagged Edge, which is coming out in the Hunted next year, at the beginning of next year, which is a warrior attack reaction that stops damage from being able to be prevented. If you print cards like that, then you're basically saying you can't be Enigma and hide behind Count Your Blessings and hide behind a board full of Ward. And I think this card answers a lot of different questions. One, Enigma that just says I win the game because I have a board and you don't have the skill check or the damage check to get past it. And 2, you're going to have to decide between the board and between resolving a Count Your Blessings. And so I think this is a pretty cool way to take it. And that's, of course, not the first time we've seen that effect. We saw it printed on Murkmire Grapnel, as well as I think like something else as well. If you know what else, leave a comment down below. Nevertheless, they are bringing cards to try and answer Count Your Blessings and Enigma specifically, which I think is great because Enigma, to me, is the biggest buzzkill in the format right now. I know a lot of players disagree, but to me, I have not been as excited to jump into Classic Constructed just because Enigma's out there lurking, and it slows the game down to a place that I don't really enjoy it as much. But what I do enjoy and what I was most anticipating for this banned and restricted announcement, I think they hit a massive slam dunk with this, the Blitz Changes. For those that have been following the channel, I have dove so deep into the Blitz format. I have never played as many games of Blitz as I have over the past 15, 20 days at this point. It has been a headlong, headfirst dive into the format, and I have remembered why I loved it so much, because you can just play a ton of Flesh and Blood thanks to the Blitz format, and that's fantastic. So here are the changes that they made to the Blitz format, because they hinted at some big sweeping changes that they might be able to do to the format. So Zen, of course, comes back to the format. They talked about how they're doubling the point totals of all the heroes in the format except for Zen, so that he can make his way back in. But then they've gone and banned Belittle in what I believe is an attempt to try and curb the power of Zen. Of course, Zen being able to tutor out by just simply attacking and showing something that's small, being able to tutor out a blue, which you can then, of course, use if you wanted to play and do things with, or just pitch. Belittle's always been one of those cards that's been pretty strong, but it makes its way out of the format. I personally, Zen coming back, no longer having access to any of the Bonds lines, means that he is a lot more of a synergistic hero and not just like an OTK I went on like turn 2 hero. So I don't think he's going to be nearly as potent, perhaps is the right way to put it, nearly as potent in the format. And I don't think that this change is really going to be that necessary, but we'll see, because it's better to play with an abundance of caution going into a skirmish season, I think, than not. And so I like the idea of it. I do think that Belittle will be rejoining the format like they say here. I think this will be largely unnecessary, but bringing it Belittle and Minnowisms back, maybe it makes Zen a lot better, and all of a sudden it's like super powerful. But the really interesting change is Hadron Collider. So for those that missed the video I did last week, I understand it doesn't get as many views because it's about Blitz. I understand, and personally I don't care because I just love the format, so I'll talk about it anyway. And I'm going to later this week. Hadron Collider directly contributes to Data Doll being the best deck in the format. Why? Because This Hadron Collider allows Data Doll to say, oh, this turn was going to be like 14 damage, which is really good. And now all of a sudden it's 20 damage because Hadron Collider decided to show up, and it just went insane because it's basically just sending an extra +4. But on top of that, it's pushing a breakpoint that your opponent probably can't stop, and the boom grenade that's most likely sitting on the table in the arena is going to trigger. So it really nets you like 8 damage if you boost the red Hadron Collider out of nowhere. And the fact that Data Doll, the laughingstock of the game, the 3 intellect hero, is now the best deck in the format, and not only is the best deck, but needs a ban just to pull it down a little bit, is so freaking cool that we're at this point. Like, this is the world we live in. And I think this is a fantastic removal. It's a card that definitely saw play both in reds and yellows, was definitely very good, and even removing this, Data Doll is still just good. She's still good. She still may be one of the best decks in the format. I don't know how much this pulls her down. It does definitely throttle her back a little bit, but I think she still just has gas. I mean, the 2 new pieces of equipment that she got, plus Cerebellum processor, really just makes her go insane off of the back of microprocessors. So she can still just high roll, which is great. I think that's really good. I don't want her to be deleted from the format. But this change does mean that the best hero in the format is a little bit more up for grabs, because I think Blaze is definitely at the top of that list alongside of her. I think there are a couple of Dark Horse heroes that give Blaze some trouble, and some Dark Horse heroes that definitely could just be the best deck in the format now. And one of those heroes is Levia. I was going to make a video about this later this week. Maybe I'll just bury the lead a little bit more, because there's a couple of other heroes that I've played 250 games at this point. As of today, I've played 250 games on the Blaze list that I've been running. And to this point, I have 2 negative win rates, and one of them is Levia. And that is very telling. That is a very important distinction to make, because Levia is quite good. And there's a couple of other heroes that I think are quite good that give Blaze fits. And this is the best part of the Blitz format, is we could talk at length about this format. It's really good because everyone's doing strong things, but no one except Data Doll feels really out of reach. Everybody has their own thing, and you have to know your matchups really, really well in order to really capitalize and know your meta as well. Finally, the Living Legend changes. Oh, they are great as well. Open the Floodgates is restricted to a single copy per deck. So I guess you run the blue. You run 1 blue, and I think that's probably right. This is great because I don't want Kano to be the best deck in Living Legend, because it doesn't make for fun games. And I'm a Kano player. Like, I want to play Kano. Like, actively want to play him. And pulling Open the Floodgates out means you still get to play your old school tomes, and you get to play like 1 extra tome. And I think that's very, very cool. Again, they mention it here. Kano is already winning. You don't have to like go, balls to the wall playing all the Open the Floodgates. I think it's super fun, and he's still super potent in the format. And now it leaves more space, because this is a format that inherently has been fun. And there's a couple of heroes, Verdance and then now Kano, that have just kind of pushed all of that to the side and said, no, it's about me. And so it shouldn't be about just them. It should be about a lot of these heroes. And one of those heroes is, of course, Starvo. And so bringing Starstruck back, I think, is cool. I think Starvo should have a permanent place in like the A tier of this Living Legend format. I'm not sure I would ever want him to drop lower than that, because I think he was the first one there. He's so iconic in the game for being the first hero that really broke everything in half. I think there's a little bit of a soft spot in my heart, and I think many others, for the big guy in the game. And I want him to always have like this signpost, this tent pole of like, hey, you remember me? I still exist. Finally, Commoner, Aether Ironweave is banned. I personally cannot speak to this. I don't play the Commoner format. Maybe I need to change that. But if you want, some insight into that, I would recommend going over to the Dice Commando YouTube channel, because he has some things to say, I'm sure, about the Commoner format and the change here. I'm sure he's going to release a video on it. That guy grinds like nobody's business. So go check out Dice Commando, and he will get you caught up on the commoner format. But overall, this was a fantastic BNR. I think this is exactly what the game needed, and I really appreciate that they did some more nuanced things than just say, hey, count your blessings, the entire thing is gone. So that is pretty cool. If you enjoy this type of video and you want more content like it, leave a comment down below, and of course, make the number go to a number that is also higher than, no, that's not how you say that. Make a number go to another number. Let's just do it that way. As always, everybody, thanks for watching.